DJ Sterling here, back with another video. Usually I spend a lot of time talking about all the great features of this controller, all the things it can do. I compare it to other controllers, but instead of doing that today, I'm going to call this video a letter to Denon, and I'm going to address all the shortcomings of this controller, some of the limitations. I've had a lot of time and experience on this controller, and I kind of want to give some feedback on how this could be a much better controller. So the first thing that everybody talks about on this controller is, where is the tap button? There's no tap on this controller. Typically on a mixer, you have a tap button. And so say, for example, I plug in a USB key with MP3s on it. The controller analyzes those. So it's deciding the tempo, the key, and all this stuff. A lot of times, especially with genres such as hip hop, the key or the tempo rather is analyzed wrong. A lot of times I'll get it, 120 BPM on a track that actually should be 75. And once it's like that on the controller, I have no way to correct that because there's no tap button. And so often what I do is I don't use the controller for analyzing music. I'll analyze it on the computer where I have much more flexibility. You can even do all kinds of hacky workarounds, such as analyze on Serato, port it to Engine Prime. You can convert your entire crate and then play it on, the Prime 4 in its native format. And there are all sorts of workarounds like that, but it would be so nice if there is a tap button. Obviously, you can't add a button after the fact unless you release a new revision of this controller, which I wouldn't get the feature. And so the next option would be to make a software feature where somewhere in the UI there's some way to enable a tap. Maybe it could be hold the shift and hit a play button, or tap on a pad with shift or something like that. If there was some way to implement a tap feature, that would be really great. Especially a lot of us longtime DJs, that's just a really good intuitive feature. It's something that's always there. It's like taking a major button off the controller that we kind of need. So I almost don't understand how this controller got this far without a tap. It has every other feature you could possibly think of, but it's missing, a bread and butter feature, something so easy. So, adding tap back with the software would be great. Another great feature would be to turn. So this controller has a computer inside of it. It has a sound card inside of it. A lot of people are streaming right now. So if you take this blue USB cable and you hook this up to your computer, you should be able to send audio directly to your computer, and this should appear as like an audio interface to your computer, and then you could live stream right from it just by connecting the USB cable up to your computer. And that's a simple fix. It's as easy as adding a driver or something to expose the sound card. And that, I don't know why that's not a feature currently, but that would be amazing. Because what I currently have to do is I take the master output over XLR cables in the back, and I run that through an external audio interface and then into my computer, where the controller then becomes, it appears as an instrument. And that's way too complicated for no reason. It adds latency. This has a sound card. Why not just enable it, right? So I think that would be an incredible feature. So, you could live stream directly from this just by connecting it to a computer through the cable it came with. Incredible feature. I would love to see that on this controller. The other day I was on a forum and somebody was talking to me. Someone asked about recording from this touchscreen here. Is there a way to record from inside the unit? If you go to the utility menu and hit record, you can record the audio, but there's no way to actually record internally what you see on the screen. And I thought about that. I was like, well, why would you want to do that? And it actually kind of makes sense. It would be a great feature. I don't know what is inside of this, if it's based on some Linux operating system or something, for example, but I don't think it would be terribly hard to add a feature where you could screen record right from what you see here during the performance. And then just imagine later in post production, you pull the video, you pull the audio, and then maybe you have some other video camera doing a stream, and you kind of overlay everything, and you could really produce an incredible video, just like if you were screen recording with Serato on your laptop, but from your Denon, your Prime 4 monitor right here. That would be really cool. So that's kind of an out there feature, screen recording, but I could see that being really cool and really beneficial for a lot of DJs. So one big thing I struggle with using this controller is getting new music into the unit. And so a lot of times I have these two USB keys and I put new music on the controller and I play directly from there. But wouldn't it be great if I could take my new music and save it right into the internal solid state hard drive, and then I could use the USB keys as a method of adding more music to the internal collection. And when I first bought the unit, I assumed I could do that, and then I quickly discovered that I could not. And in fact, the only way I know to get music into the internal storage is to either pop out that hard drive or take this blue cable, connect it to a computer, throw this into USB mode, and then, then it's like moving music to like a external hard drive again, right? So it would just be a really nice feature if you could use the USB keys or the micro SD card to add new music directly to the internal storage space. So before I used this controller, I was a Pioneer DJ. That's all I exclusively used were Pioneer controllers. And on some of them, even the entry-level controllers, the DDJ400 example, instead of having a slicer button here, you have the hotkey, loop, roll, and slicer. On that particular controller, you have a sampler. And that is a crazy powerful feature that I wish every controller had, especially this one, because I do perform on this so often. And so basically what that allows you to do is you hit the button for sampler before you start performing on it. Obviously, you can use your computer to assign like audio clips to these various performance pads here. And that way, when you perform later, you just hit the sampler button, and this is basically a MIDI controller now where you can trigger sound clips. And for me, as a DJ, what do? I use that to trigger my DJ drops or play sound effects. You want a horn, you want an explosion sound. You can play all these sound effects that are not tied to the channel, right? Because on the Prime 4, that's what I have to do. I have to take a long track with a bunch of sound effects on it. I have to load it. I have to set hot cues, and then it's almost the same thing, except now I'm utilizing a track. And if I want to play those sound effects, I can't just hit sampler and hit a button. I have to actually load that track, which takes time. I have to find it, I have to load it, and then I have to hit, one of these buttons to trigger that effect. Where a sampler, you're not occupying a channel to play a sound effect. So, once again, these buttons are here. There's no way to change or add a button here. But if there were some way to do shift in something or some bank or something, I don't know. But a way to add sampler to this controller would be super duper useful. That's something I use pretty much every single time I perform. And especially as a live streamer, when you perform, you want to hear your name often so people, know who's playing the music, triggering those DJ drops, triggering those sound effects, especially for transitions or just trying to build up energy. Really, really nice. I would love to see a sampler kit built into the Prime 4. So again, back to not necessarily live streaming, but because people are live streaming so much right now, everyone's on the forums very active talking about what they're doing, how to do it. And one thing that came up was karaoke. This controller is super duper good because it has those two mic inputs. It's got a lot of output. You have zones, you have booth master, you have RCA, XLR. You have so many output options, which is crazy, and that's part of what makes this a professional controller. One really good feature would be if you could run karaoke from this controller, and there's different software you can use if you connect a computer and then, you know, run the USB into here. You have a lot of flexibility, but as far as the output, it might just be as simple as adding an HDMI port or doing something in the firmware which allows you to run some option to play karaoke from the controller. Or maybe there could be a streaming service similar to how you have SoundCloud. I don't know if I don't do much with karaoke at all, so I'm not really knowledgeable on that. But if there were a service where instead of SoundCloud, you pull up your karaoke service and it's got, you know, a video where it displays, you know, some wallpaper, but with the song lyrics, and then it plays the audio synchronized, and then you could have a mic, you know, some karaoke integration with this controller would be a crazy cool feature. I would also love to see that implemented. If you saw my last video, I was talking about these dual effects engines here, and then I also pointed out the fact that if you have an external source coming in from line-in, such as like a vinyl turntable, these effects engines don't work. I think that's also just another hardware limitation, or possibly just a software limitation from, you know, what's built into Engine OS for this controller. Denon makes controllers where that does work, and I think that would be a great feature, because this is such a flagship product, to go ahead and build that feature in. If there's some way that the line-in could run through the effects engines, that would also be another huge benefit to having this controller. And for those guys hooking up that equipment, I'm sure they'd really appreciate that. I actually don't perform too much with vinyl. It's something kind of new to me, and so when I play, I'm pretty much a 2-channel DJ, except for this controller where I have no sampler. I might use a 3rd channel to do effects, but this is plenty for me to have fun. But I know a lot of guys out there that will do 2 channels from the controller, and then 2 from CDJs, or 2 from vinyl turntables, and that's a really cool option, especially if you do, you know, any kind of scratching or, you know, any trick mixing. You'd want to use vinyl for that. This is something I think every DJ would appreciate, and that is the recording on this controller. It should be super intuitive, but it's So the issue I have, just like everyone else, is when I hit utility, I hit record, it starts recording, my music goes to my source, which is going to be a USB key. I put that in the computer, I play the file, which I think is a WAV file, and the audio is way too quiet. And so I have the extra step of post-processing where I have to drop the audio into Audacity or Ableton and boost the volume back up. And that's really annoying. I wish there was a setting to normalize the recorded audio on this controller. Maybe just some simple knob or something somewhere to set low, medium, high recording volume, or something in the software to adjust that volume, so when it's recorded to your source, you know every time that it's of an appropriate volume. That's the most annoying thing about recording from this controller, is every single time I have to go post-process any recorded audio, and that just adds time. So yeah, so that's pretty much it for now. I think in the next firmware update, Denon did actually address a lot of the issues that I had previously, like with the streaming services. Say you're looking at a collection through SoundCloud, and I'll actually just pull it up here. Library, like tracks, and let's just start. Okay, so this is some music that I liked in SoundCloud. Doesn't really matter what it is. The thing to note is that if you look at some of the data here, you get the artist, title, and then you get a track length, but it doesn't tell you the key and the BPM. So that was actually fixed. You'll see that in the next firmware update, which will be nice. Also, being able to preview, that's something they fixed. being able to drag and drop. Well, oh, that's cool. All this extra info now. Being able to drag and drop, music into a favorites folder or, organization, that's there. When you have a preview, you can take your finger and kind of seek through the track. So you can start at the beginning, hop to the middle and the end and see if that's the vibe you want. And if you like it, you can download it, analyze it, and throw it onto a deck immediately. So, Denon's working on a lot of different software updates and a lot of new features for us users, and I'm really proud of that. Their support's been really good. And hopefully they can kind of take this next list and and step it up and keep making a really great product, because this is an amazing controller. So I'm DJ Sterling. Thanks for watching. Peace out.